Hello! I've got a special topic for us to start off today for all of you viewers who are not from Singapore. It's about a special phenomenon that only occurs in a special set of conditions that exist in Singapore. It's like spotting a beautiful rainbow. Conditions had to be perfect for it to exist. To be clear, there's a problem for Singapore, and I'd like to see that us outside of Singapore, people from outside Singapore, to see that Singapore is a real place, real people facing real problems, not just a brand. Because a lot of the time, we're told, this great thing has happened, this fantastic thing has happened, and you rarely if ever actually hear about what's a real life issue that crops up. And I think that's important to take note. Okay, let's jump into it. So here's the thing. Here's the introduction to the problem. Rich Chinese people love Singapore. And this is from the Telegraph newspaper in the UK. They buy property, park their money locally in Singapore, and then send their children to local schools, or maybe international schools sometimes. It's great for companies that serve that clientele, right? Also, the rich Chinese are mostly not competing with locals because the positions they occupy, like the entrepreneurs or else they're senior management in big companies. They don't compete with locals. They're unique, and they are few in number, and they hold different jobs, buy different things. They don't really, they're not going to compete with you to outbid you for your, like a new Toyota, for instance, or, probably eat at different restaurants, shop in different shops, all that, right? And it's a real phenomenon. You can see here, Singapore just emerging as a playground for Chinese millionaires, snapping up high-end properties, luxury cars, and private club memberships. Yes, but those are not things that your average Singaporean would be buying anyway. So it shouldn't really bother them. You can imagine how people the way they spend the money. It's crazy. Piers Cheng, chief executive of a relocation services firm, told AFP. So it's a pretty interesting article to read. Link will be in the description, so you can check it out there. But I want to move on a little bit. It feels like rich Chinese people have become a lightning rod for frustration in Singapore. Opposition leaders in Singapore have been talking about rising property prices, and let me just show you that. So here is one of the leaders of a Singapore opposition party. They've been talking about, they at a forum for his party, was talking about rising property prices and how the mortgage burden is much higher on buyers today. See, BTO is a reference to built to order, the public housing, commonly called HDB, but actually it's HDB flat, right? HDB is an acronym for the Housing Development Board in Singapore. So their flats are built to order, so it's BTO. So BTO flats are now just shorthands BTO. So it promotes the idea that housing is an asset to be traded rather than a home to grow a family. So that's according to Dr. Paul Tambia, leader in the opposition. So he participants at this forum said they are deeply concerned, and large share of their wallet for housing loan repayments has eroded their cash and CPF savings. So you have more mortgage to pay, and you don't have much money left to save. And the GST in Singapore is due to has just been increased by 1%, is due to increase another percent at the start of 2024. So it's all in the schedule. And it's very, very painful for people, right? They say that presently it's reported that some home buyers who bought HDB flats at super high prices are in negative equity after paying off interest for their loans. So interest rates are high, you bought it at a super high price, you're struggling to repay it, you're struggling to make these really high payments, but you have no choice because public housing is the cheapest option on the table. There's nothing cheaper, so you're stuck with that. But I think most of the time, this will be a bit of an edge case problem because most people buying, there are some units that I think public housing in Singapore, I think recently in the past year or so, some units have gone up as high as $1 million new in Singapore dollars. So that'd be something like 3 million ringgit, and I think maybe $1 billion rupiah, I think thereabouts. And that's public housing, right? It's not some premium property. Okay, moving on. So people feel the pinch, right? And it feels to me that some of this becomes resentment towards the free spending Chinese, simply because their spending is more visible. which I think it's fair to say it's kind of true. Even in Malaysia, I would think. I haven't been in Indonesia that much, but it doesn't feel like the same at all. Like this is something that I don't feel has touched Indonesia, or at least Jakarta, that much. Now, after all, rich Chinese people buying luxury properties has absolutely nothing to do with the mortgages on public housing, isn't it? So, is it is it true that this resentment towards free spending Chinese is just because their spending is more visible, right? Well, actually, I think there is one way that these can be connected. Public housing is priced according to the market value of the land that it sits on in Singapore. So when you when this public housing is being offered to the public to buy, the price of it the setting of the price is based on some formula that takes into account the value of the land that it sits on. And while the land is not a piece of land that luxury property buyers will take, because it's probably not prime land, it's not in town, it's not in the shopping district, it's not super cool. Luxury property sales at high figures will certainly bump up the value of the land that sits on, right? So luxury property land being sold at super high prices will certainly bump up the value of that piece of land and the surrounding piece of land, because that's how it goes, right? You have this really expensive condominium right here. The properties around start to look more attractive and more expensive as well. And so this actually leads to a domino effect, right? The neighborhood now is priced higher, and this drives some people to seek cheaper real estate elsewhere, which then drives up prices further away. So there's that domino effect rippling outwards. Now, some may say, Waylene, don't be absurd. I saw that fewer than 150 condo units were bought by overseas buyers in Singapore last year. I saw that while browsing around. It's even lower than before the pandemic, and I did read that. However, stop for a moment and think about it. High sales in a stable pre-pandemic real estate market and the same sales in a volatile post-pandemic market are entirely different. Now, take a look at this. Also, in Canada, the government has taken the decision to ban some foreign property investment due to sky-high prices. Now, guess who's snapping up the Canadian condos? Chinese people. This article doesn't actually mention that though. Okay, it just says that took effect this year, bans foreign buyers from buying residential properties and investments for 2 years. So for 2 years, non-Canadians can't buy these homes in Canada. There's something about a Canadian Real Estate Association Prime Index still up 38%. That's really high. Yes, and blah, blah, blah. Goes on a little bit more. Not that important. Just the fact of the ban is the important bit. Now, you still don't buy it? You think, well, Canada and Singapore, don't really have that much in common. I don't really know, if something that happens halfway across the world is related to what we see, right? Fair enough. I accept your challenge. Now, let's look at Wall Street Journal. Yes, this article from 2018 already sniffed out the trend. See, Western cities want to slow flood of Chinese home buying. Nothing works. Nothing slows the juggernaut. Let's see. They mentioned cities as far apart as Toronto, Vancouver, Auckland, Melbourne, Sydney. Yeah, let's see very quickly. In Vancouver, Chinese home buyers snapped up properties so fast in 2016 that prices escalated at a rate of 30% a month. Crazy. Chinese buyers had begun returning to Vancouver, driving prices to fresh highs in mid-2017, provoking a new round of measures in February. And in fact, so this problem, look at this. Chinese foreign property purchases. Source Qy. Qy is a Chinese real estate portal. They track these that track these overseas Chinese investments. I don't know how they do it. Going up and up and up since 2010. And by the middle of the last decade, it was what? Huge. Hit 100 billion, over 100 billion. Let's see. Officials in Canada and Australia, where relatively affordable homes and large Mandarin-speaking populations attract Chinese buyers, worry the price bubbles threaten their regional economies. Yes, because housing then becomes so expensive that for locals who don't earn as much, you know, they start to get priced out of living in their own neighborhoods, right? After seeing what happened in Vancouver and Toronto, Miss Plant from Montreal is worried her city would be next. Oh yes, and you can see here, let's see, median housing prices. What has happened, and the numbers represent when certain measures were taken to slow down the Chinese purchases. So let's see, in green, number one, there was a 4% tax imposed on foreign buyers. Didn't slow it at all. Then in number 4 here, the tax went to 8%, which then actually slowed things down. Let's see, for in pink, Victoria State, home to Melbourne, foreign buyer duty went from 3% to 7%, and it, you know, had no noticeable effect. You know, the spending, the median house price continued to go up. So you can see, let's see, in number 5, yeah, October 2017, New Zealand announces a ban on foreign buyers of existing homes, and that really seemed to break a trend that had been going back some distance. So, and look here, unstoppable juggernaut. So it does in fact look like this is a very, very significant, you know, like overwhelming trend that is taking place all around the world, affecting places in Canada, Australia, or wherever that Chinese people like to put their money, you know, places with considered beautiful and safe, you know, with existing Chinese community. Yeah. So that goes on and on and on. I'll again put this article into the description so you can read it there if you like to. And let's see. The last thing I wanted to highlight is that now, even in 2018, attention is already turned to Malaysia and Thailand, which now tops the list for Chinese buyer inquiries ahead of the US and Australia. Pretty crazy. Pretty crazy indeed. In fact, I just saw a short piece of news that I won't actually put up here on the screen. That says that as of last year, Airbnb China found that the most popular destination on Airbnb.com was to Thailand. Turns out the pent-up, you know, travel demand, like right as the COVID restrictions were lifted in China, a huge number of people wanted to go to Thailand, more so than US and Australia and the UK. Yeah, that was pretty interesting. Okay, where are we now? So, looking back at the real estate problem, inflation is certainly contributing to the problem too. This is another factor in the volatile market. And since Singapore is an island country, she doesn't have the option of simply clearing some land for cheaper homes. In Malaysia and Indonesia, high home prices in the capital would lead people to move further away. But what happens when that's not an option? That's the dilemma here, right? Canada has already decided enough is enough, as you've seen, and no amount of tax revenue is sufficient for the problems that it causes for citizens. Nobody knows yet how it will go in Singapore. I'm sure they're considering similar measures, but it would go against the brand of Singapore, which is be extremely open, be very welcoming to business and high net worth individual, as they call them, you know, rich people, to buy a home, to put their assets, live in Singapore. Yes, so it would be very difficult to turn that around. Moving on now. Now, after a week of obsessing over a spy balloon, attention, in the Philippines at least, has turned to a different kind of pesky intrusion. A Chinese vessel shone a laser at the Philippine Coast Guard. You can see it right in the photo here. Now, let's see this. Coincidentally, President Marcos of the Philippines visited Japan last week to discuss security. He said that the Philippines is considering a defense pact with the US and Japan. It says here the Philippines already has a defense pact with the... Oh, it's not here. Already has a defense pact with the US and Japan separately. Let's see, is it here? Yeah, no. Well, sorry, I saw that somewhere. That they're having separate defense pacts with the Philippines, and now they're going to band together, and three of them come to an agreement, which seems like a pretty big deal, because, of course, the Philippines has been having difficulties with Chinese Navy vessels or Coast Guard vessels for some years now. And the former president of the Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte, he tried to, adopt a balanced position between China and the US. But it seems like President Marcos is stepping away from, changing, let's say pivoting slightly from that. Yeah. Now, I'm sure that many of my viewers have friends and family who are part of the China Support Brigade. Everybody has some, family friends who are part of that brigade. Maybe you take that position too. After all, what happens in the Philippines feels so distant. Maybe they have some issues that we're not aware of, between the Philippines and China. I think that's fair, but then the responsibility falls on the Chinese Coast Guard to explain themselves over the laser, right? Without a satisfactory explanation, we can only conclude that they are the aggressor. Furthermore, as I've said before on this channel, China vessels intrude into Malaysian waters. And here's the evidence. Only half a year ago, a China Coast Guard vessel has been reported to have encroached in Malaysian waters off Miri in East Malaysia, just days after Chinese military aircraft were detected near Malaysian airspace. Right. And a year before that, Reuters reported that Chinese ships intruded into Malaysian waters 89 times in the past 4 years, or 2016, 2019. So it's an ongoing problem, a very significant problem, huge number of times. And then in just last month, you can see here, just last month, Indonesia's government sent a warship to monitor a Chinese vessel, right, in the North Natuna Sea. Again, this intrusion has taken place multiple times over the years. Let's see. Yes, in 2021, there was some incident, and this article does not mention it, but there have been other instances where Indonesia and China have crossed paths in the North Natuna Sea, arguing over who owns it. If you find yourself arguing with a relative over China, choose your preferred naval incident from above and invite them to respond to it. Again, links will be in the description. When they inevitably turn the topic to the US, you can just stop there and claim victory. You know that there is no justification for the naval intrusions, and so they must change the topic. Let them know that you have claimed victory and leave it at that, because there is no arguing against it. Facts are the facts here, right? Okay. Lastly, let's not move on to the most entertaining Malaysian Prime Minister in my lifetime, at least. Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim was asked to comment on corruption allegations involving former Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin and his son. So what happened was there were allegations that former PM Muhyiddin Yassin had awarded a lucrative contract to his son-in-law, and according to Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim, well, it wouldn't have come under the spotlight if it weren't true. And that's pretty funny. Because for those of you who are too young or may need a little reminder, Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim is a man previously accused of having bum fun time with his personal assistant and was sent to jail on those charges. I find his comment a real pain in the butt, if you know what I mean. Maybe this is a backdoor way to tell us that all the legal smoke of 1998, when he faced those charges for the first time, came from a real passionate fire. Sorry, I gotta stop there. It's too much. I just couldn't help poking a little fun at our Prime Minister because he seems to have the rather short memory. But I'm not just here to poke fun at the Prime Minister. I want to give credit where credit is due. Yes. Very briefly, Malaysia will not reintroduce goods and services tax, which, according to what I understand, is a very, very popular position. No GST in Malaysia. And this is a significant decision because the government of Malaysia has been trying to raise more revenue to pay for all the government services that take place. And for a long time, it seemed inevitable that GST would be introduced. But the Prime Minister has decided that, we'll find ways to raise money elsewhere and we will not be introducing, this tax, which to me, huge plus because I am not really in favor of additional taxes. I would rather be in favor of cutting costs, for instance. Nobody ever talks about that. So yes, big credit. And another thing which deserves, earns the Prime Minister great credit is this op-ed in the Bangkok Post, which put more context on Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim's recent visit to Thailand. It turns out that the Thai Prime Minister General Prayut started by stating clearly that Malaysia-Thailand ties have not been progressing very well. Yes, and this frank admission from the Thai Prime Minister drew a big smile from Mr. Anwar, set the tone of his 2-day visit. And this is pretty remarkable. A lot of the reporting at the time focused on the economic agreements, but if you will let me claim a little bit of credit here, I thought that security was a major issue as well. And this op-ed appears to confirm my suspicions. Let's see. The most, yes, it says here, Mr. Anwar charmed his northern neighbor with 5 clear messages, the most important one being that our relations will not be held hostage by the trouble on the southern border. And that's where he leaves it. That's where the author of this op-ed leaves it. Now, the trouble on the southern border, for those who are not too clear on that, is that there's plenty of smuggling going on the Thai-Malaysian border, and also there are some groups in southern Thailand fighting for autonomy or independence from the Thai government. They want to form some different political unit in the south, and I suppose that is problematic. I'm not sure about this. I may have read something to the effect that, when they run from the Thai authorities, they will slip across the weakly guarded Thai-Malaysian border, and so they will just escape capture because the Thai army can't chase them into Malaysia. Furthermore, Malaysia does not condone the use of violence to resolve any conflict, which is a rather generic statement. We have a 595-kilometer shared frontier, and we have to work together to develop border areas for common peace and stability. Yes, of course. And there was a lot said about the economic agreements for the border states that focus on the border states, develop them further because they are, as I understand it, they are not that rich, and developing them further would remove the impetus, the motivation for fighting against the Thai government. Okay, moving on. Now, what I didn't know was that Thailand has a lot of influence on Myanmar. Yes. One of the most productive and insightful discussions was on regional and security issues, especially the current Myanmar crisis and the situation in southern Thailand. Okay. Thailand has a 2,400 kilometer border with Myanmar. That is insane. And there are approximately 6 million workers from Myanmar working in Thailand, legally and illegally. Wow, I had no idea. And what I didn't know, so from this, it is clear that Thailand's very close to Myanmar because, you know, they share such a huge border and there are a lot of people going across the border, you know, I suppose both ways. So there must be, you know, a lot of interdependence and deep cooperation, right? And it looks like Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim wanted to nudge Thailand to rebuild relations and to get their, you know, agreement to put some pressure on Myanmar to find a peace solution, you know, for their troubles. I like this very much because Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim is taking the issue of Myanmar very seriously. He has been on the record speaking to Indonesian President Joko Widodo. Indonesia is going to take over the chairmanship of ASEAN, and it was reported in the news that they spoke about Myanmar. So that is very influential. And also now speaking to Thailand, which is I suppose, you know, a really close ally of Myanmar in general, you know, over a long time. Now, why is this important to Malaysia? You might ask. Well, there are approximately 150,000 Myanmar refugees living in Malaysia. It's a huge number. It's a huge number. I didn't know that there were so many. Let's see. Does this article address it? I cannot quite recall. Yes. Let's look at it here. Here we go. The shifting politics of Rohingya refugees in Malaysia. Now, according to The Diplomat, there are 500,000 unregistered refugees in Malaysia. Let's see. Let's see. Where is it? Here we go. There are at least 500,000 unregistered refugees in Malaysia. That is a huge number. You know, that is Malaysia has a population of 33 million. If true, something like 1.5% of the Malaysian population, the overall population, are refugees. That is absurd. That's huge. I had no idea that was the case. And even if we just restrict it to Rohingya refugees, there are about 150,000, according to The Diplomat. And that, again, is a huge number. Really big. And according, again, to The Diplomat, in 2014, the Rohingya were the main suspects for brutal communal violence in Malaysia. So in Myanmar, there are Buddhists and Muslims. In Penang, in 2014, 2 men were killed very violently, and it was suspected that this was due to some animosity between the Buddhists and the Muslims. And that is just unacceptable, right? We can't accept people coming into Malaysia and killing people, even if it's each other. We just can't have that. It's too dangerous. So this is the right move. I think this has been a issue that has gone somewhat under the radar, like the issue of the encroachment into Malaysian waters of the Chinese Navy vessels. So, in closing, I would like to commend Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim for his good work in covering the back door of Malaysia. And I hope that he continues to do even more good work, because we need it, to be honest. I was not expecting much from him, but so far he's doing okay. long may it continue. And that's all from me for today. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe. Thank you, and we'll talk to you again really, really soon. Take care. Bye-bye.